This is an audio-only horror story. I want you to close your eyes in. 3, 2, 1, 0. Use your imagination as you listen, and use your imagination to invoke a scene. Enjoy the ride.
My name is Samantha Cole, and my first real job after graduating with a degree in mortuary science led me to Eternal Elegance Funeral Home. The place was as grand as it was old, a Victorian mansion shrouded in mist and mystery. I had always been drawn to the serenity of my chosen profession, but nothing could have prepared me for the unsettling reality of working under Mrs. Eleanor Whitaker. I remember the day I walked in vividly. The grand foyer was adorned with dark mahogany and antique furniture that seemed to whisper secrets of the past. Mrs. Whitaker, an elegant woman with an almost ageless beauty, greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her presence was both commanding and strangely disquieting. "Welcome to Eternal Elegance," she said, her voice smooth and cold as ice. "I'm pleased to have you join our team. I trust you'll find our practices unique." She handed me a small, leather-bound booklet. "These are our 5 rules. They are not merely guidelines, but the essence of our work here. Rule 1. Show absolute respect and dignity for the deceased at all times. Rule 2. Maintain strict confidentiality about all procedures and methods. Rule 3. Ensure the deceased's appearance is preserved as if they were merely sleeping. Rule 4. Complete the embalming process by the end of the day. Rule 5. Follow all instructions from Mrs. Whitaker precisely." The last rule unsettled me. It implied a level of control that felt excessive. However, I was eager to prove myself and began my new role with a mixture of enthusiasm and trepidation. The first few weeks were a blur of routine tasks, preparing bodies, handling chemicals, and familiarizing myself with the procedures. However, a peculiar pattern soon emerged. The funeral home seemed to receive an inordinate number of young, exceptionally beautiful women. Each one's preparation was marked by an obsessive attention to detail, and their funerals were lavish beyond the norm. One evening, as I was finishing up my duties, I overheard a conversation between Mrs. Whitaker and David, one of the assistants. Their voices were hushed, but the words reached my ears with disturbing clarity. "She's a masterpiece," David said, his tone reverent. "Yes," Mrs. Whitaker replied. "We must ensure she remains perfect. True beauty deserves eternal preservation." The phrase eternal preservation haunted me. It seemed as if Mrs. Whitaker's interest in these women went beyond mere embalming. That night I lay awake, unable to shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, I decided to investigate further. I started by reviewing the records, hoping to find an explanation for the influx of beautiful women. The records revealed a disturbing pattern. Each woman had died under suspicious circumstances, and their funerals were excessively elaborate. One evening, while everyone was busy with preparations, I ventured into the less frequented parts of the mansion. My search led me to a hidden door at the back of the embalming room, a door I had never noticed before. The room beyond was dimly lit and filled with strange equipment. It looked almost like a laboratory of sorts, with shelves lined with vials of glowing liquid and intricate contraptions. In the center of the room was a table, and on it lay the body of a young woman, her face serene and untouched by decay. Mrs. Whitaker's sudden appearance startled me. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice carrying an edge of menace. I struggled to keep my voice steady. "What is this place? Why are there so many young women here?" "This is where we preserve more than just the body," Mrs. Whitaker explained, her eyes gleaming with a disturbing light. "We capture and maintain the very essence of beauty itself." Her words were chilling. The room was filled with vials containing a luminescent fluid, and the equipment was designed to extract and preserve the essence of beauty. The process was more than just embalming. It involved creating disturbing artworks from the essence of the deceased. As Mrs. Whitaker elaborated, it became evident that her obsession with beauty went far beyond traditional mortuary practices. The essence of beauty was not only preserved, but used to create unsettling, macabre art pieces. These artworks were displayed throughout the mansion, each one a grotesque celebration of the eternal beauty she sought to capture. "The essence of beauty is extracted and stored," Mrs. Whitaker said, her voice filled with a strange pride. "These women are not merely preserved, they are transformed into eternal works of art." She showed me the vials of glowing liquid, claiming they contained the pure essence of beauty. The bodies were treated with an elaborate process that included both chemical treatments and ritualistic elements designed to maintain their physical beauty indefinitely. The extracted essence was then used to create disturbing art pieces that adorned the walls of the mansion. The more I learned, the more horrified I became. Mrs. Whitaker's quest for eternal beauty had become a nightmarish pursuit, turning the funeral home into a gallery of grotesque creations. Unable to bear the weight of the horrifying truth, I knew I had to confront Mrs. Whitaker. The practices at Eternal Elegance were not only unethical, but deeply disturbing. I decided to gather my evidence and expose the truth. One evening, after collecting as much information as I could, I approached Mrs. Whitaker in her office. Her demeanor was calm, but I could sense the underlying menace in her presence. "Mrs. Whitaker," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. "I know what's going on here. These practices are wrong. You can't continue them." Mrs. Whitaker's eyes narrowed, her expression turning cold and threatening. "You think you can just walk away from this? You've seen too much. The art we create here is not just about preservation. It's about transcending time itself. You are part of this now." Her words were a chilling threat. She stepped closer, her gaze intense and unyielding. "You've meddled in things you don't understand. You can't leave without facing the consequences." I felt a shiver run down my spine. Mrs. Whitaker's control was absolute, and escaping her grasp would not be easy. I had to find a way to leave and expose the truth without falling victim to her wrath. Determined to escape, I knew I had to be clever. I gathered all the evidence I had collected: photographs, vials of the glowing liquid, and detailed notes on the grotesque artworks. I reached out to trusted contacts outside the funeral home, sharing the information with them. One night, as the mansion lay shrouded in darkness, I prepared to leave Eternal Elegance. My heart raced with a mix of fear and resolve. I made my way to the exit, my steps echoing in the empty halls. Just as I was about to reach the door, Mrs. Whitaker appeared in the hallway, her face a mask of cold fury. "You're not going anywhere," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "You've interfered with our work. You must face the consequences." Before I could react, she lunged at me, her hands reaching for the evidence I had. I fought back, struggling to protect the documents and photographs. In the chaos, I managed to break free and flee through the mansion's back exit. With the evidence in hand, I went straight to the authorities. The revelation of Mrs. Whitaker's dark secret sent shockwaves through the community. The funeral home was raided, and the hidden chamber was discovered. The vials of glowing liquid and the grotesque artworks were seized, and the truth was exposed. Mrs. Whitaker was arrested, and her twisted practices were brought to light. The young women whose beauty had been preserved were identified, and their families were informed of the horrifying truth. The case was widely reported, and Eternal Elegance Funeral Home was shut down. The exposure of Mrs. Whitaker's secret brought some measure of justice, but it was a cold comfort. The lives of those beautiful young women had been exploited, and the legacy of Eternal Elegance would forever be tainted by the darkness that had lurked within its walls. As I moved on from Eternal Elegance, the experience left a profound mark on me. The world of embalming, which I had once viewed as a solemn but honorable profession, had revealed a darker side I could never have imagined. The beauty that Mrs. Whitaker had sought to preserve was tainted by the horrors she had inflicted. I continued my work in mortuary science, but the memory of Eternal Elegance haunted me. The 5 rules that had once seemed so reasonable now felt sinister. Respect, confidentiality, preservation, efficiency, and obedience. Each rule had been twisted to serve a darker purpose. the world is filled with hidden horrors, and sometimes the very institutions meant to offer solace can harbor the most disturbing secrets. As I moved forward, I carried with me the knowledge that the darkness within us can be more profound than any we might encounter in our professional lives. The shadow of eternal elegance lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of the perils that lie beneath the surface of even the most seemingly ordinary places. And as I continued my career, I knew that I would never again look at the work I did or the people I encountered in the same way.
As the final echoes of the tale fade into the darkness, remember this: in the shadows where fear takes root, the true horror lies not in the creatures that lurk, but in the darkness within ourselves. We tell these stories not just to scare or entertain, but to confront the fears that we try so hard to ignore. So as you step back into the light of the real world, carry with you the lessons of the night. The monsters we create are reflections of our deepest anxieties, and the strength to overcome them is within each of us. Sleep well, and remember, in the realm of fear, we are the true masters of our fate. Good night, and may your dreams be free of shadows. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, subscribe and click the notification bell for you to see my future update on this channel. Stay safe and always remember to lock your doors.